So Kemi Badenoch already failed at the first hurdle. This morning, at the time I'm doing this, she did her first Sunday round with Laura Kuenssberg, and oh my word, she failed. She failed spectacularly because the question, of course, of Boris Johnson came up. You know, what do you think to the whole Boris Johnson incident? And Kemi Badenoch, gave Johnson a free pass. She continued the lie or the trend that, oh, he was just ambushed by cake. That once again signals this is not a brand new Conservative Party with a brand new Conservative leader. It is someone who was part of the previous administrations, quite heavily so, even though, you know, a lot of people don't really want to admit it. She was there in the background quite a lot of all this stuff. She participated in some of this stuff. And guess what? When she had a chance to say, this is a new time, this is a new day, time to start again, bottled it, just as Sunak did. Why? Because she is terrified that if she were to upset Boris Johnson, that he would then start attacking her in the Conservative news press, which would ultimately have a very, very bad negative effect on her poll ratings. Because she knows absolutely that the people she's currently really appealing to, those people in the Conservative sort of section of things, they absolutely still love Boris Johnson. If Boris Johnson said jump, they'd say how high. If Kemi Badenoch said it, they'd be like, sorry, we ain't jumping for you. Because she does not have the same level of authority that Boris Johnson has, which explains a lot as to why she completely bottled that question. So we're going to have a look at what is the first article going in to explaining on Conservative Home, now that Badenoch has won, by, of course, our favourite T-boy over there, Will Atkinson, and what he thinks of all this stuff and the challenges that Kemi Badenoch faces. And once again, she is not up for the challenge. She has never demonstrated any proper political acumen, even though you've seen a lot of people in like the past 24 hours going, oh my God, we found our next Margaret Thatcher. I don't like Margaret Thatcher, but at least I will say this. Margaret Thatcher did have actually some political acumen compared to the absolutely nothing that Kemi Badenoch has demonstrated. We've seen what she acted like as a minister. She didn't really gain good marks. She didn't really impress anyone in any of those ministerial roles. All she was good for was she talked about the culture wars, which guess what? Feeds the right-wing membership of the Conservative Party membership, which guess what? Voted for her. Not in overwhelming numbers. Many stayed home or didn't even get involved at all in this contest. Guess what? That isn't going to translate to you at the next general election. Also, no policies. Still. What is she going to suggest? What is she going to do? Because this is what the new leadership contest was all about. There was no policy being suggested or anything like that because they have no clue. They have no clue what to actually offer. And I guarantee you, when it does finally come to start offering policy, Kemi Badenoch's going to offer anything different to what Rishi Sunak was offering because they have absolutely no clue. And bear in mind, she ain't going to make it to the next general election. She is not going to make it to the next general election because people are going to expect her to actually start performing, and she ain't going to start performing. Especially even now when you look at the polls, she isn't exactly liked. Because now she's going to take the spotlight, and then people are going to actually start, paying attention to what she actually says. And as we have followed Kemi Badenoch for quite a while, I fully know what she's been saying all this time. It ain't going to resonate with the rest of the British voting public. those comments about maternity and locking up all those civil servants, yeah, not going to resonate well at all. So, as always, let's crack on then into this. But before we do that, there's the Patreon page. There's a Buy Me Coffee link where you can, well, buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, you can click on the like and share button as well. And if you are new, hit the subscribe button. So, let's crack on then over into this, with the title of The Game Commences for the Usual Fee plus Expenses. Yeah, not the most fantastic title when you're talking about your newly assumed leader, Will. So, Kemi Badenoch now must be wholeheartedly congratulated for at least her moment of triumph. Her victory was hardly unexpected. She had been leading in the Conservative Home Survey since 2022, and members now have had the chance to vote for her, and they were at least denied by the MPs then. It is a very obvious source of dissatisfaction for Giles, Henry, and me that our poll has once again proved very broadly accurate. And yeah, this is partly why I keep on saying we come to Conservative Home, because these polls do largely reflect who is popular, who the Conservative membership would vote for in a Conservative leadership election. This is why I was saying for the longest time Kemi Badenoch was going to win. And my prediction, based on these polls, guess what? Proven right again. So, yeah, even if she did win by at least a 13%, it was not an overwhelming victory. She won now by a smaller margin than any previous leader under the post-William Hague system, having now only commanded one more MP than Jerrick in the second to last round, and a total compromising 35% of the not overly large parliamentary party. Her first task is to now bind her party to her. And this is what a lot of people have said. You look at these results, once again, the Conservative Party is not united. It is incredibly divided. Still, how does she do this? How does she go about achieving this unity? What does she do? So, while of course it will make most sense for to have allies now in crucial roles, such as Andrew Griffith now as Shadow Chancellor, a prominent role for Jerrick is now surely a must. Yeah, yeah. Just give Jerrick the chance to stab you in the back in the first opportunity, Kemi. By all means, because Jerrick will absolutely be waiting for that opportunity. For her now unwillingness now to, of course, agree to his demand of leaving the European Court of Human Rights, Shadow Home Secretary might prove too tense. And that's what he would ultimately probably demand. Not only that, but continuing that demand of leaving the European Court of Human Rights, still continuing to champion that idea, because that is the new Brexit to people like Jerrick and the rest of these hard right headbangers. That is their new mantra, their new call. It is Brexit 2.0 to them. Those calls are not going to go away. No matter how many times Kemi Badenoch might say, oh, I don't think, she will buckle. And then once she buckles to that, all the One Nationers are going to come out and go, Kemi, we ain't doing that because that is a dumb idea. And then she'll have problems with them. And once again, chaos win the party. And that is only one part. The only reason at the moment that there is such a uniting, that there was no talk of policy, very little policy. When Kemi Badenoch starts to introduce policy or starts to talk about policy, this is where the cracks will start to form. And this is where, once again, the divisions in the Conservative Party are going to go into an open eruption again, because the party is so divided along ideological lines, along so many topics, and they have not been really ever sorted. So, but it continues. So one does obviously does expect that there are two, of course, relatively close, at least on foreign policy. So Shadow Foreign Secretary maybe would be a best bet. Yeah, giving him the role of, probably maybe the most second powerful Shadow Cabinet position next to Shadow Chancellor. Do you really want to do that? She will, of course, be very disappointed that James Cleverly has chosen to go to the backbenchers. Yeah, probably the most Cleverly thing he's ever done. Just get out there and, just merge into the background while all this chaos goes on. Just keep yourself out of it cleverly. Again, very cleverly moved for him to actually do. As they always say, cleverly by name, not by nature. But hey, at least in this case, he's done the right move on that. So, of course, the rugby club party unity spirit has, alas, at least deserted him. If he does hope to take a position himself as the maybe affable what if everyone's second choice candidate who can step in if she stumbles, she should at least support any London mayoralty bid that he then floats, should he choose to muck in. This is, of course, the big thing now that Cleverly might go for London mayor. Will he? Who knows? I don't think so, because if he does go for London mayor, sort of takes him out of the running for any potential future party leader role or prime ministerial role, anything like that. So, does he want to go have a crack at London mayor? Oh, who knows? Maybe. We'll find out. Time will tell. But it is a big rumor that is going around. Tom Tugendhat, Mel Stride, and Priti Patel should all be found roles. Why on earth would you give Priti Patel a role? Why on earth would you give Mel Stride a role? Tom Tugendhat, maybe I could understand, giving his experience and the fact that he did gain a lot of his popularity from being on the Shadow Defense. So from being on the defense committee, that's where he built a lot of his reputation. So maybe you give him Shadow Defense. But even then, Tom Tugendhat, quite the one nation centrist. Is he really going to agree with Kemi Badenoch and everything that she does when she really starts to push some hard right policy? I don't think so. So should, of course, vary some key Jerrick backbenchers. From the prodigious output of his Substack alone, one could at least suggest cloning Neil O'Brien and having him fill every shadow cabinet brief. With that very unlikely, shadow health or even immigration might at least be better bets. Or leave that to at least Nick Timothy. Let him roam freely in the Keith Joseph style super portfolio. Yeah, giving these things to key allies is fine if you can trust them. Here's the thing. One thing that still should be pointed out. Can these people be trusted? Can they be trusted not to, rock her off a pole or throw stones at her now that she is right at the top of the pole? And we've said it before, Kemi Badenoch does not make friends, she makes frenemies that will be very, very happy and smiley, but the first opportunity will take her down. And if you put people in these powerful positions, they will start to exert pressure on her and say, well, I'd like to do this. And if she gets into an argument with them, these will become very open and probably very publicly known about very quickly, which will once again sink the party because you will return to squabbling. And I tell you this now, the second squabbles start to break out in the shadow cabinet room, they will be put on broadcast. I can guarantee you that. We will see some absolute fights behind the scenes in the shadow cabinet. I guarantee you this now. So back to this. So whilst Rishi Sunak having bequeathed her our first poll lead since 2021, Badenoch will, of course, come under pressure in the very short to medium term. Why did they get this poll lead? They've got a 4-point poll lead. Why? Well, mostly because it is of the whole stuff about the winter fuel allowance and, of course, the budget. The budget, as we said, was actually quite good. Labour really needs to be getting out there and really doing some good PR on this, that how good this budget actually is. The fact that it is really targeting a lot of people who have a lot of money that can actually afford to do a lot of this stuff. And, of course, pointing out all the stuff that the budget is sort of going to go to. This is what we will probably see. But as I did say, Tuesday, well, it's American election. Pretty much from Monday, that's all anyone's going to be talking about. You only really have the weekend to do this. it's budget time. Then you've got maybe the rest of the month, depending on how that shakes out, maybe the fallout of that. You've really got until the rest of November, maybe December. Then you go into sort of the Christmas period where it's sort of things are going to sort of be quiet again, and then we'll see what happens. But there's a lot of other stuff still to come down the pipes. There's probably a lot of stuff maybe going to sort of be kicking off in the new year. We'll see what will be happen once we get a spring budget again. Who knows what Reeves will sort of do here, what she will look at then. Like I say, still a lot of opportunities, and yet Conservatives are hammering home a lot of these things, and annoyingly, Labour aren't hitting back at them when they could be. They could be actually saying, we're in charge, we're doing this. Really help start and send out what the message is. And that is annoying at the moment. They are not getting the comms right. They need to find a new Alistair Campbell to get in there and start getting the comms out right. Because if not, then in a couple of years' time, even though just like Biden had all these achievements during his year, but when people were looking at him, they were like, well, what's Biden actually done? Well, Biden actually did a lot. He did the Inflation Reduction Act. He did the CHIPS Act. There was a lot of stuff Biden actually did during his tenure, which was quite good, but his team just didn't talk about them, about all the good it was doing and stuff like that. And yeah, I fear we could be in a very similar situation. I do fear we could be very similar situation in a couple of years' time. But here we go. So, so back to this. So a government at least has a very as abysmal as this one will provide at least a plenty now of open goals. But will it be open goals though? Abysmal? Abysmal on what? The budget actually wasn't that bad. The whole Conservative argument has been, oh my God, these taxes are so high. But it's going all to a lot of public services, which people want proper funding for. So what is your Conservative argument for that then? That you lower taxes, that you're not going to put as much money into these public services anymore? Good luck securing that vote and trying to sell that message. But as Haig proved, a few good performances at P&Qs are not enough to overhaul a landslide Labour majority. She will at some point need policies, and that is where the cracks are going to start forming, as I said just a moment earlier. So, whilst Jerrick had shared much of Badenoch's analysis of the structural reasons for our failure to make the country more conservative, yeah, you're trying to make a country more conservative when you look at how the country actually is at the moment. It's fundamentally not going conservative. People are not becoming more conservative. People in the UK are becoming less and less conservative. How are you going to do that? How are you going to, quote, make people more conservative when you are now appealing to a very older voting bloc, which is only going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you are now competing for them with Reform UK? Good luck on that. Of course, he displayed, the willingness to reverse now the obvious manifestations: the Equalities Act, the European Court of Human Rights, the Climate Change Act, the planning system, human quantitative easing, and the alpha cry, where the furor cry went up. Badenoch now is very reticent to do the same. She must show why. Again, all these things, very, very popular. Very, very popular with a lot of people. Labour's going to do a lot of stuff with the planning system as well. They have the majority to be able to do it. You're probably seeing stuff happening on that front next year. Human quantitative easing, is that spending stuff, budget stuff, is immigration? I'm not. That's the first time I've ever heard human quantitative easing used. But yeah, the Equalities Act, good luck getting rid of that. There's going to be a massive pushback on that. Same for the European Court. Same if you're going to push back on the Climate Change Act. That is going to have a lot of negative consequences for you if you do go after that. And if Badenoch does not say that she's going to get rid of those, then guess what? The right of the party is going to start getting very agitated against her. And she's going to form into the exact same problems every single of other predecessors has had. What is she going to do different? What is she going to do right? And then guess what? What if the other side said, well, we don't agree with that? We'd rather just, get rid of the Equalities Act altogether or completely leave the European Court. She's got massive problems to solve, and none of these are going to go her way. And how she intends to solve these, and the fact that, as I've said before, she has no leadership qualities that she has ever really demonstrated. How quickly, how long will she actually really last? So, Badenoch's, of course, very studious silence on policy allowed her to stay uncommitted. And that enabled her now to reach across the party and win support on various grandees. But you have to make choices. You have to then say what policies you are or not going to support. But you continue to say, but you'll have to make, of course, difficult choices. And if she is serious, as she claims, she will have to be about changing Britain. She must make a lot of people quite angry, including many in her own party. Can she actually kill the sons of Brutus? No, she won't. She won't at all. When she starts to make these difficult choices, starts to say what policy she isn't going to do, that is when she's going to seriously encounter problems. Right now, because she's completely uncommitted, no one's got anything bad to say about her. No one's got anything to do. But the second she starts to commit to certain policies, that's when the cracks are going to start appearing. So tonight, Badenoch at least should celebrate. Quite honestly, her smashing the glass ceiling is not something that interests me. I have very little time for identity politics, but if Badenoch and her supporters and many looking on in Britain and around the world see it as a significant achievement, all power to them. Charlotte at Labour's Chortle, of course, should we say Charlotte? Chortle, of course, at Labour's expense, even if it means trying to play their game. And yeah, this is something that's so bizarre because Badenoch herself, I think Femi made this. He wrote an article about Badenoch winning, and he pointed it out as well. Badenoch says she hates identity politics, she hates doing all this, but she will, at the drop of a hat, play identity politics when it suits her. And wait until a racism row breaks out, because that is a ticking time bomb. We already had the donor issue previously during the election of his comments made about Diane Abbott. How does she maybe solve something like that? But tomorrow, the hard work begins. The 5-year slog of getting us back into power. Again, very optimistic. Well, very optimistic indeed. We must prove to a disillusioned electorate that rejecting us en masse, that we have listened, changed, and are at least serious about bringing the revolution they need. Again, what revolution are you going to do? All you are going to do is pretty much maintain the last status quo. What are you being serious about? They rejected you en masse for a reason. You have not listened. You have not changed. Nothing has changed in the way about the Conservative Party. You are not proven that you are any more serious about this, and you are certainly not revolutionary. They hate us and they hate Labour. They hate politics. I think Badenoch gets that. She must prove it, and very soon our voters will hate her too. Oh, trust me. The second people start to realize what the stuff that Badenoch says, yeah, they're going to hate her very much so too. So the average tenure of a Tory leader since John Major stepped down has only been 3.5 years. That is a dismal that is a dismal state, to be honest. That should, of course, not take us to the next election. But with only 121 MPs, we are now all hanging together or separately. But if Badenoch does not achieve a consistency of lead over Labour and with reform within a couple of years, if not months, MPs will start getting very twitchy, even with the new threshold. And again, 30% now, which amounts to 30 or so letters. I think it is 30 32, 35, something like that, I think it is. One of the things that we know that we've heard from Tory MPs, because the threshold was so low, they were a bit hesitant about sending letters in because the threshold was so low. Now that the threshold is higher, that's not going to, maybe a lot of MPs are going to be less hesitant. Oh, yeah, I'll send my letter in. I think that will be the case. And even then, if you start getting that, those MPs are now openly getting twitchy, pushing her on stuff, then what does she do? Remember, she can be forced out by other MPs. It is not just a leadership election or a vote of no confidence, which she would have to fear. There are lots of ways MPs could get rid of her if they really wanted to. And like I say, we are going to probably see in the next couple of weeks, like I say, on Wednesday, it's going to be sort of difficult because obviously you're going to have US elections, but it will also be Kemi Badenoch's first time at PNQs. How is she going to perform? What is she going to do? It's going to be very interesting because that is going to set the standard and tone for the rest of her PMQ's premiership. I guarantee you it's probably not going to go very well. Because all Starmer has to do is just push her buttons, and it does not take a lot from what we have seen in the past. And then, oh boy, is she going to get into a fight with the speaker? Is the speaker going to have to ask her to leave the chamber? Yeah, that's going to go down well, isn't it? So back to this. So the partisans, of course, Boris Johnson, of course, Penny Mordaunt will then strike up. Badenoch would, of course, be very mad to let either stand. Of course, either within Parliament. If Cleverly isn't considered a threat, one can never even rule out a Sunak restoration. Sunak won't be around for too long. Of course, he is the only MP that all current Tories in the MPs in the Commons have at some point agreed should actually be Prime Minister. Northallerton will only hold him for so long. I don't think they will ever bring about a Sunak restoration. I think Sunak is intending to sort of quietly, sneak off into the background. It would not surprise me within 6 to 12 months if Sunak, quietly leaves. So even if, of course, Labour have struggled, one cannot, of course, rule them out turning things around as they get used to government and carry out a few judicious reshuffles. I don't think we're in a state of reshuffling at all at the moment, but there you go, Will. They're not your party at the moment. Reform are, of course, now establishing themselves as now a national political force, winning council by-elections. Nigel Farage will obviously try and outflank Badenoch immediately on immigration. She must have an answer for that ready on that very existential issue, or she will lose. Very true. How is Kemi Badenoch going to tackle Nigel Farage? How is she going to attack the fact that Nigel Farage is always going to sort of outflank her on many of these issues? What does she do? How does she tackle that? That is true of any leader who won, but especially so of Badenoch. How is she going to handle all this? How does she deal with reform? Does she do a deal? Does she not? Because that will open its own can of worms. I've said before that any future Tory civil war may involve some sort of Nigel Farage phase where talks are abound about what do they do with Farage? Do they accept him? Do they try and bring him into the party? If they do, Nigel Farage being in the party, oh boy, he ain't going to settle for being on the backbenches. He's going to demand a shadow cabinet position. And then eventually he will probably try and make himself leader. Yeah. Because Nigel Farage knows he only has to get to the final two. And the Conservative membership will vote him in with absolute glee and abandon. So there you go. So by the next election, there will be at least a better chance than any point since the war for a third party to at least break the Tory-Labour duopoly. That might be Farage, or even the startup party that may move from Substack into reality. Again, that's, of course, the Dominic Cummings idea, the startup party. Does that actually become a reality? Who knows? But once again, Willer's obviously ignoring the fact the Lib Dems. Why is he not paying attention to the Lib Dems? It shocks me so much that the Conservatives just do not consider the Lib Dems to be the absolute, potential threat that they are. Some do, but others, like Will, here you can see him writing immediately, doesn't even consider the Lib Dems a threat. He's more talking about the immediate threat from Reform. Bear in mind, Reform does have, some threat to the Conservative Party because it does split their votes. But who did they lose more seats to? Reform or the Lib Dems? Who's actually expressed their intention of becoming, by the next general election, the main party of opposition? It's the Lib Dems. Anyway, so the Conservative Party has no divine right to exist. Wipeout is a genuine proposition. Badenoch now must admit that. She must either fight to save the party that she loves. But all that is, of course, for the future. We have our new leader. She is thoughtful. She doesn't strike me as thoughtful. Passionate and committed. She has the backing of our members. You didn't make that argument at the beginning of that, but there you go. Change your mind on that, haven't you, Will? She has now at least a grasp of the task ahead. Does she? Don't think she does. And the gumption that where many would, of course, flee the scene. To get us back into government, we wish her all the best, but we have work to do. The game commences for the usual fee, plus now expenses. And there's a lot of people basically saying, what she needs to do here. But yeah, I don't think she's going to last that long. I don't think she's going to last. I think once the voting public actually see who Kemi Badenoch is, and bear in mind, if you've been following my channel, you know how bad Kemi Badenoch is. Congratulations, you are probably more politically aware than most people in the country. Once it actually starts getting reported, like the things she said, the videos start to get shared around. Do you think all this crazy, weird stuff that Badenoch has said in the past isn't going to come to light? Not only future things as well. The fact that she thinks maternity pay is far too generous, when actually I think it's the lowest, once again, in Europe. Families sure aren't voting for Kemi Badenoch. At least new families, they're certainly not voting for Kemi Badenoch either. Yeah, good luck for that. So, big challenges is right. Can she solve all of them? Well, there is absolutely no evidence of a track record from Kemi Badenoch of her solving any type of these problems. And yet, a lot of people this weekend calling her the new Thatcher. Again, I said it in the beginning, I don't like Margaret Thatcher, but I'll tell you what, Margaret Thatcher had more political acumen than Kemi Badenoch. Because Kemi Badenoch certainly hasn't shown that she has any. And the second she starts to talk about what policy she is going to commit to, that is once again where we'll start to see the division, the splits, the infighting, the shadow cabinet stuff. Chaos will once again reign within the Conservative Party. And to quote Will, she will not be able to kill the sons of Brutus. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think down below as well. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.